I'm going to ask you to sort of remind people what it was, but just an editorial comment. It was fun watching Zappa and Dee Snider just hand the heads back to these very haughty senators
Yes.
all the time, telling them this is not censorship.
Yes. Well, and don't forget John Denver, and John Denver as the poster boy that all of the members of the Senate panel loved and fawned over, nonetheless said, "Look, this is censorship." And the one thing that they wanted to avoid was anyone calling them out on it being censorship, saying that this was just a voluntary thing. But it's voluntary with the government's thumb on the scale, both with a carrot and a stick. There was the stick in terms of threats that there could be legislation and the threats that they could use FCC action to enforce what could be played on the radio, and a carrot in the form of promised legislation for the music industry in the form of a blank tape tax that would have given a share of profits from the sale of blank tapes to recorded music interests because they were worried about people copying records and tapes.
But this was a moral panic started, I guess, by Tipper Gore and maybe Mrs. Baker.
Tipper Gore, Susan Baker. There were a number of prominent
political,
exactly. Washington wives
yeah.
that decided to form this organization called PMRC. It really didn't have that many members, but the Los Angeles Times estimated that half of PMRC's membership was married to 10% of the Senate.
Yeah.
And so that explains why when they took up an issue that the Parent Teachers Association, the PTA, had been trying to get prominently discussed for a couple of years, and we're making no headway. Once the Washington wives of PMRC got involved, within a couple of months, they got this hearing before the Senate Commerce Committee in September 1985. They got the attention of regulators and legislators, and a lot more pressure was then put on the music industry.
So one of my theories that I haven't researched to know whether or not it's true, but I suspect it was definitely a part of this, is Al Gore ends up running for president in '88.
Yes.
And this was, I suppose this precedes Bill Clinton's Sister Souljah moment. But I suspect that he was trying to establish his sort of family values bona fides through his wife, Tipper Gore, going into his aspirations to be president. Is that fair, or is that just speculative?
I try not to psychoanalyze politicians. I mean, it's certainly plausible. It certainly would work with the narrative of I think, most ambitious politicians. And, as someone who was giving me some advice when I went to the FCC, told me, look, there's no political downside to going after indecency or anything to protect the children, because after all, it's going to be a very popular message, and if you go too far, the courts will take care of it. That's the theory anyway. And so it's always sort of a very popular political move, as I described in various episodes in the book involving comics and music and so on. But it's also true that because of Comstock and because in the 20th century we developed both a culture of free expression in America, as well as a solid core of legal protections for the First Amendment, is that censorship is seen as a bad thing, the censor's dilemma that I talked about before. Yeah. And it's why the senators of the Senate Commerce Committee went to great pains to try and say what they were doing in that hearing had nothing to do with censorship.